Instead of a $5 million surplus, a just-released independent budget analysis, or IBA, found uncertainty around the cost of the city's shift to a 401k pension plan and payment sources for redevelopment projects like the convention center that may result in an $84 million city deficit by the end of next year. Here to talk about this potential budget discrepancy are San Diego's Chief Operating Officer, Jay Goldstone, and City Council member Todd Gloria. Thank you both for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I want to take a look at the numbers. The revised IBA outlook predicts an $84 million deficit compared to the mayor's nearly $5 million projected surplus. And that gap continues for 5 years, ending with a possible $43 million deficit in 2018. So my question for you, Jay, right off the bat is, how did the city arrive at their numbers?
Well, first of all, I don't read the IBA's report to suggest that there will be an $84 million deficit or a $43 million deficit. How we craft our outlook is that we take a baseline approach, looking at the kinds of services that we're providing right now, our actual legal obligations on a go-forward basis, as well as where our revenues are going. And based on all of that, what we knew at the time we released the outlook, we had a $4.9 million projected surplus, and even in the IBA's report, she does not dispute that information.
What do you think about that, Todd? Is the numbers, is that the reason you think the numbers are so far apart, or do you think there's something else going on?
I think the independent budget analyst is raising a number of issues that are risks, some of which have extremely high price tags associated with them, and signaling to the city council, who she works for us, to prepare for this, and that's what we'll be doing. But there is certainly a range that's there. I like to tell people, budgeting is a lot of numbers and figures, charts and whatnot, but really in actuality, it's an art, and so there are a lot of subjective and things of that nature that we have to couple in, and that's what you're seeing with these dueling numbers.
And specifically looking at the discretionary and indiscretionary funds, IBA looked at the increased support for the arts as a non-discretionary, as a discretionary fund, and also the impact of redevelopment funding, pension plan losses, and changes due to Prop B. So basically, I guess my question to Todd is, were these budget concerns between the discretionary and non-discretionary funds part of the reason you opposed Prop B?
Well, one of the reasons I opposed Prop B was for this very reason, which is that it actually costs us more money in the short term. I think if you ask the average voter who supported Prop B, they wanted to end pension mistakes and thought that this was a way to reduce the bill. And the fact is, it actually increases it. I don't believe most people understood that. A $22 million hit to next year's budget is a substantial amount of money. It could be, several libraries, many rec centers. That's what we're dealing with.
But Jay, you had mentioned before that you thought that these were kind of short-term, sort of paying the piper up front, but in the end it would benefit San Diego. Talk about that.
Well, there's no question. And I want to also point out, though, that even in our outlook where we're projecting the $4.9 million surplus for next year, we laid out the risk to the city as it relates to the pension payment, to the loss of redevelopment dollars as well. All we're doing on the pension payment, and I do not disagree with Councilmember Gloria that that money might be able to be used elsewhere, but we're accelerating the payment of our liabilities. It's not costing the city more in the long run, but clearly in the short term, we're dedicating more revenues towards paying down the pension liability.
Let's move on to redevelopment, because that's a huge, that's something a lot of redevelopment agencies, maybe many of our viewers will call kind of shut down over the last couple of years. Did the mayor's projection kind of factor in this redevelopment and where the money was coming from, and we may not have it?
It did. In the 2013 budget that the City Council approved, that was proposed by the mayor, we set aside funds to at least address short-term some of the loss of redevelopment money to cover debt service payments that might have to be picked up by the general fund. We've also been able over the years to build our reserve balances, and we're above the 8% target. That should not necessarily be the floor, but that's what the current reserve policy is. And so we have resources that could help the city, weather some of these uncertainties.
Especially with the redevelopment, Todd. How has the city, or have they, I should ask, prepared for redevelopment costs like, the convention center, Petco Park, some of these major projects?
Well, as Jay has mentioned, we've created contingency funds. We've held our reserves and actually grown them beyond their targets in anticipation of risks like these. And we're being aggressive in pushing back against some of these takings. A lot of these things are executed agreements with legal deals and bonds associated with them. We believe we have a legal standing to push back against Petco Park, against Convention Center, and some of the other things, and we'll continue to do that because it's the right thing for San Diego taxpayers.
Okay, our viewers can watch or look at that full report on our website. Todd, Gloria, and Jay Goldstone, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.